Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. An interesting day of CDL matches and a spicy day at that. Mr. Clayster, otherwise known as Grayster, having some words to say for Dashy after their series up against OpTic Texas, bringing back drama from a couple of years ago. The argument might be, why is Clayster making such a big deal out of a league match? But also, does he have a fair point in that he always seems to be an OpTic when he plays them nowadays? Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. Plenty to discuss. We've got to dive into the first series. JoeDeceives was briefly coming up on stream as Dashy. Bit strange in a way that they have all the cameras. I'm guessing Dashy was already there in his setup, getting some scrims in and stuff like this, or maybe just getting some practice and warm up in before their series, and they managed to switch up the cameras here and got it slightly wrong. So yeah, JoeDeceives was briefly appearing as Dashy while he had no idea that he was on the broadcast, so a bit of a strange one. Also, the iLLeY back in Texas officially got the red beanie on right here, so you know, obviously no longer on the Toronto fiber line, and they're all back in Texas there now, but no coach behind them, right? Because JP is, I guess, their analyst now. He's kind of in that coaching department. So far, we've seen OpTic in this nice honeymoon period. Whether that will continue to take, well, we'll see how it turned out here in a couple of seconds' time. The first series, though, I don't know what it is with Los Angeles Guerrillas right now. A really interesting team to watch because yesterday, up against Atlanta FaZe, they got blown out of the park on map 3 and map 4. We thought, okay, wow, FaZe, aBeZy came to play on those particular maps. Maybe that's not a feature of FaZe, though. Maybe that's a feature of Los Angeles Guerrillas because Game 1 and 2 were very tight. They actually won Game 1, and again, their hardpoint looked pretty much impeccable. But then when it came down to, you know, actually getting the series over the line, that's where they just completely collapsed. In fairness, they almost collapsed Game 1. They had a massive lead Game 1. They pretty much threw it away. I'd only just about close out this hotel. They got 1-0 though, regardless. And then, I mean, look at this. I've got to put this on the full screen here for you guys. Exceed jumps over CleanX and gets absolutely spot on beyond belief here on the Mikado. I mean, it was kind of a nice play. Exceed tried to make, but he got absolutely shafted. I'm sure Chance would have had an interesting take on this one if you guys remember the Formal versus Reedy clip from a few years ago. But man, CleanX turned up today. And the thing is with CleanX, he's probably the most like impactful 0.9 KD player in the entire league. But when this guy drops a 1.1 or a 1.2 or even better, they're basically impossible to beat at Fields Toronto given the way the other guys are playing. And their SMG duo have been pretty deadly. They destroy Los Angeles Guerrillas on the control, basically just what FaZe did just yesterday. And then the final map was a complete blowout here on the Hydro. I mean, look at this. CleanX just is absolutely killing everything. They were up by 100. They were soon up by 150. CleanX even mid-map here was playing with his food, trying to get a kill, end up getting turned on, but it doesn't matter. So LAG, a bit of a weird team because they should be not particularly good in theory on paper in my head, but yet they've had some really good performances in kind of spurts so far this stage. They couldn't really deliver though when push came to shove against FaZe. I mean, they should have beaten FaZe, choked the 4-0, 5-2 Game 5 lead, and against Toronto, when it came down to some prowess in the respawns, just didn't quite have enough. So still optimistic for their chances at the major, but it's quite clear that they're not going to be the favourites by any means, but more of a kind of dark horse to make a run going forward. And every series that passes, the other teams will have a better idea what these new guys are bringing to the table here. And of course, the other big drama going in here was, well, all of these guys really up against JoeDeceives because we know what was said before. Actually, I don't think you guys can quite see that, so we'll look at what Standy's saying. Just focus on the top right-hand corner. He actually picks up the camera to tell them they're terrible. Fantastic stuff. So yeah, JoeDeceives, bit of drama about this player, right? Because he was, well, considered by many to not be the top prospect that should have been picked up. He was. He's actually making the most of the opportunity, I believe. But yeah, there's been a lot of trash talk going around from many different players towards JoeDeceives. Scrappy certainly thought so. I mean, his post-game content here was just hilarious. I've got to share this for you guys. Like, the fact that Scrappy just does not care at all, man. The fact that he said this live on broadcast, I found hilarious. But I mean, yeah, he doesn't hold back.
Number one spot. Please welcome back to the show. We got young Scrap again. Scrap, we played your clip. First of all, when did you first have that quote about JoeDeceives? And did you feel any extra pressure competing against him today?
No, not at all. You know, I don't beef with stains. It's just not me. But yeah, all I said was more challenger players deserve a spot over him, which is true. And I'll still stand to that to this day. And yeah, I just don't beef with stains, to be honest.
Well, yeah.
So far, that carries his son and Toronto Ultra get over the line to go 4-1 in the qualifiers. Even their organisation were taking the mick out of JoeDeceives. Shame you can't go back and drops, you know, Vanguard ranked play where, of course, he had quite some success previously. So all the organisations nowadays getting in on some of this banter that was pretty good. And looking at the numbers, Standy, CleanX had a 1.36 here, and Scrappy and Inside the AR duo didn't have to do that much. That team is deadly, 4-1. Only series they lost was to OpTic. Speaking of OpTic, that's the next series we're going to discuss. The Search and Destroy battle was interesting here, and honestly, we've kind of started to see that teams that were good at certain modes and not good at others starting to flip that. This can happen over time just because, look, Vegas were only going to be good at search for so long, gets to a point where other teams are going to look very heavily into what they were doing to be the best search team in the game. Now that's fallen away a little bit, but game one they win, and I think that honestly what this came down to a fair bit for OpTic was the vetoes. These were the maps they decided to play. A few maps in here, certainly the map 4, kind of Hydro Hardpoint, not one that OpTic usually go for, and also, you know, some of the Mikados, they're not usually so keen to play those than some of the other teams are. So maybe they saw this series as a chance to expand the map pool a bit. Of course, this wasn't Rambo-led, right, because he's not calling the shots over there anymore. So, you know, I guess they decided to go down this route, thought that was maybe their best chance against Vegas, or they wanted to get some reps in on some different maps going into the major, because at the end of the day, when you've got your winners bracket slot secured, it's not so much of a big deal what your seeding is, even if you place first, right, and you might play the 8th seed, which might be Los Angeles Thieves or something. I'm not sure if that's even possible anymore, but like, it doesn't really matter, it seems, if you place first or second or third or fourth or whatever, you probably play a team of relatively equal standard anyway, because the league is so competitive and upsets can and do certainly happen. So game one goes the way of the Vegas Legion. This was crazy. I mean, I don't know, I was watching this series thinking, damn, does Clayster really just have OpTic's number? The last time Clay played OpTic, because it didn't happen last year at all, obviously, because he was out of the team, and I don't believe he played OpTic right at the start of the season when he was on New York. The last time he played OpTic was the Cold War, I think, World Championship, where I think he knocked them out of the tournament, or at least locked them down to losers or something. Clay also had OpTic's number that entire year when he went there, OpTic Chicago. So Legion had never beaten OpTic, at least since they were OGLA in the entire CDL history. But, well, it turns it around, and this is the thing, like, Clay individually might not be playing so well, but he does just add that element to a team where in series like this, they can somehow pull out results. It wasn't just Clayster, of course. TJ got a 3-piece at the end of this game one, and yeah, OpTic looked kind of lost at times. They didn't seem too familiar with how to play these maps with their new roster, but they do win the search and destroys. Their search was looking good. I thought, okay, surely this is going to go to at least a game 5, and then it seemed a bit of a toss-up to me. They end up taking the search and destroy 6-4, go to a control where somehow I mean, this is funny to me, really, and obviously OpTic are going to have to think about this one, because Vegas are arguably, I think they probably have been, the worst control team in the league. Temp gets a 4-piece here with his crews to, well, put them up 2-0 here in the map, but then it goes 2-1, then it goes 2-2, and all the way to a round 5, and at this point I thought, okay, maybe the sweep is going to be in, or the reverse sweep within the map of control. Vegas are terrible at the game mode, OpTic have been pretty good at the game mode, and they tie everything up right here, but fair play to the Vegas guys. I think they were as surprised as the viewers were, to be honest, to see them actually win this final round of the map, and I mean, yeah, they took a nice little offense here, all of the 4 were stacking on it. Clay was absolutely loving it. He seemed kind of Bibler that actually managed to win this one, to be honest. Temp was having a good time, Prolute turned up, and of course, all of these guys, with the exception of Temp, have been on OpTic before. TJ on the, well, OpTic days, and then the OGLA days as well. Black Ops 4 OpTic, right, TJ was there, Prolute was there last season, Clay way back in the Call of Duty Ghost days, so kind of crazy to think about the fact that that's true, and I guess they were all looking for some form of revenge here, and then this was what was surprising to me, that it didn't even go game 5. OpTic get closed out in all 3 respawns here on the Hydro Hardpoint. This was the Temp show largely, and I do think a fair bit of this, only look at Hype Clayster, baby, just love to see that the passion from this guy, because, you know, I really like to see Vegas winning the series. It's good to see. I don't think they'll get winners anyway, and of course OpTic were in a spot where they could have got number 1 seed had they won this series, but I thought Clay was, you know, it seemed after the series they lost yesterday, they were so out of it really felt like out of all the series today, the one where an upset was least likely was this one. Based on the Vegas we saw yesterday, they were totally checked out, so it's nice to see them focus up and turn up again, and, you know, Clay's obviously still got the passion and the ability. He had a good series individually as well. The first time Legion beat OpTic since the launch weekend in 2020, and that was OpTic Gaming Los Angeles. That is remarkable. And I think from the OpTic side, a fair bit of this comes down to playing some new maps, and in that final half when it did feel like Dashy was the only one really keeping them in it at times. It's interesting, right, because when iLLeY was in Canada, not even with the team, he was putting up like ridiculous MVP performances. Now he's back there in Texas, has a bit more of a lackluster series, and all of a sudden OpTic kind of look very vulnerable. So fair play to Vegas, but also OpTic with a lot to think about. Is the honeymoon now over for them? I'm sure they wanted it to continue going into the major, but as I said, really for OpTic, they've got to try and get top 4 here to give them some momentum going into their home major, Major 3 in Texas. So this is certainly a setback for that, but might be a setback at a relatively good time. They do play FaZe tomorrow though, and obviously Clayster was here on broadcast saying, please get us a facility, and then he went on to say the following, and this is where the backlash kind of started towards Clayster here, right, because I did wonder if he was going to tweet this. It felt like the way that he was reacting and everything, that he was going to have something up his sleeve. So he quote tweets this from from Dashy from January 2021. I remember talking about this tweet at the time, and he kind of, says, oh, Dashy, nice one, mate, you still can't beat me type thing. This was the original tweet thread from back then where they did a video, right, where Dashy and the OpTic guys rated the ARs, and Dashy gave Clayster a C tier player, and then, Clay was kind of, well, having a bit of joking around, it seemed like, at the start of things. However, Clay then says, terrified of which Brandon, the benched one, or the one who just plays for kills, and then Dashy says, oh, I'm so excited to see what you can do this year with No Zero or the Tiny Terrors, and I think that season, Clay on the New York subliners took down OpTic Chicago most of the times they played them, and now again is bringing up this 2-year-old beef when they play again, because Clay finally played Dashy again. In fairness, Dashy was kind of the only one shooting back, so doesn't really work quite so well. But yeah, wonder what you can think about this, guys. Like, obviously, Clayster, he's earned his right to talk some trash after this series victory. At the same time, it is an online series win. It's 10 league points. It's not a massive deal. It's not like he took him down at a tournament, for example. Some would say he went a bit too far or was a bit too petty. Even aBeZy says, you're too old to be this petty. And but look, Clayster says, come on, bro, it could end up being the last ever time that I get to have fun on Twitter. So Clay, we know that he's thinking about his retirement and when he might step away, whether it's this season, whether it's mid-season, hopefully not, whether it's in 5 years' time in an ideal world. But yeah, as he says, who knows? Is this the last time he ever beats Dashy? Is this the last time he ever beats OpTic, right? You've kind of got to, I guess, at this point in their career, think, damn, this could be the last time in my entire life, really, that he ever gets to beat OpTic, which is something that, I guess, he wants to make the most of when the chance arises. Fair enough. So, yeah, what do you guys think about that? Has Clayster gone too far? Is he too petty? Or is this just a little bit of good beef? And hopefully they get to rematch at the LAN, because that's where things will really kick off and where the chips are really down. Let's talk then about the final series I'm going to discuss in this video, Boston versus Florida. Another vintage Florida performance here that doesn't go Game 5 this time, though. Game 1 was outrageous. This was the map of the day in my eyes, at least in what I've seen so far. Like, absolutely absurd. Florida should have won this at least a couple of times. Then Vivid goes absolutely huge with a 3-piece. And in fairness, they should have won it on the previous hill. Got some weird spawns, though, Florida. Then then Boston get the flip, actually. So Boston got the weird spawns. Then they get the flip. And then number 3 gets a god spawn in the back, Major Maniac, takes down Methods. And that then allows them to break in and get all the kills. And at this point, it looks like, okay, it's done. The last man alive is Nero. 1 versus 4 for Nero. Gets 1, gets 2, gets 3, 49, 249 on the clock. He goes for the knife because he runs out of bullets. Man, if he got the knife kill there for the 4-piece to close out the game, because at that point they'd have spawned out, his team would have won the game more than likely. That would have been, I mean, it reminded me of the Kenny Gibraltar 4-piece. You guys might remember Team Caliber versus Echo Fox a few years ago. It was a play like that. If he'd have pulled it off, man, that'd have been the play of the year so far. Probably wouldn't have been able to be top, to be honest. So, yeah, super close to being the clip of the year. Didn't happen, though. Florida win Game 1, and these were the standings actually at this point here. So Boston needed a win to go 3-1, at which point they'd have guaranteed themselves winners bracket progression. London are for sure out of it, but tomorrow we'll discuss kind of the implications of what could still happen on the final day, because tiebreakers and map counts and all this, bit of a mess. But Florida as well, they needed a victory here in an ideal world, but well, they were trying to make it happen after the Game 1. Game 2, though, honestly, man, one of the rounds here, Havoc nearly clutched a ridiculous 1v4. Reminiscent of his 1v4, he clutched an Advanced Warfare against OpTic on Riot Search and Destroy. I think he was on the team Isolation at the time. Crazy 1v4. If you guys haven't seen it, look up Havoc versus OpTic 1v4, Isolation, Riot Search, Advanced Warfare, something like that. You'll find it. Great 1v4. Reminded me of that, but he didn't win it. Methods actually clutched a 1v1, can you believe it, to close out and prevent that happening. And then Boston had the momentum. They go 1-1, then they win the control, then they win the hard point. And Florida, man, their respawn is just absolutely atrocious. It really is. I mean, yes, they won the first map of the series, but apart from that, they're 1-9 in hard point this stage. It's an absolute disaster. Of course, they dropped Awakening. Now he's beaten them on Boston. Boston need a really good run here at their home major, because it's their home major. If they don't perform, changes might be forced to be made there, right? But, so far, they're still looking good. I really rate Vivid. Nero was turning up as well. Awakening had a great series. Methods did his thing. But yeah, what to do for Florida, right? Because Dave Pay, I think, has kind of shown that he's earning his spot. He's actually, I mean, he's 70 and 70, but he's done quite well here. A lot of damage, most damage on his team. Havoc has been very good for them as well, I think. So there's an argument that says, look, trade out Vickle for another Challengers SMG that might be better suited to this team, and maybe just bring back Brack for Major Maniac. That's what a lot of people are suggesting. But look, they've made this change at such a time where they're going to have to run this team, you'd think, going into the major. So very much enjoyed your thoughts on all this in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.